This is gonna come back to bite me,
isn't it?
Okay.
Ouch! It bit!
Yeah. I'm gonna need the seat.
Can you please not sit on the tire and fucking delaminate the inside of it before it even gets put on?
Where'd the other seat go?
The little black one's out there. Red one's there, black one's outside.
Okay, because I'm gonna need to sit where you were sitting, essentially, Jay. That way I can get down here.
Fancy armrest.
Oh. All right, Paul. Whenever you're ready.
I'm not ready. Ever. Right. So, lots of crazy measurements going on here. So, bunch of crazy things in the inner workings of my absolutely lost the fucking term for what I want to call my mind. But as you can see, this is the driver's side of the Mazda. We took our control arm out, which the mount here, and it has a little, it's a front wheel drive ball joint style control arm, which makes absolutely zero sense to me, but it is what it is. So as you can tell, it's just a McPherson strut style. You have your strut up here, a bolt that comes down onto the actual control arm, bolts on. That does all the wonky camber and steering, Ackerman and everything else that's nuts about that convoluted setup. So what we're doing is, in lieu of wanting more wheel travel, we're getting rid of that crap. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a double wishbone setup, so double A arm, aka this, without the McDonald's cup. So this here is the upper control arm and steering knuckle assembly off of a 2001 Ford Ranger two-wheel drive model. So the lovely thing about this is we have this wonderful double wishbone setup. It's going to provide me with quite a bit of travel, but here's the problem. This car was a McPherson strut. So what we are going to have to do is cut out some of this metal in here and make a frame piece that I'm going to be able to bolt my control arm up to. We're going to have to make a custom piece to fit my coil-over shocks that I'm going to have to get, because I've got to have coil-over shocks. And the lowers, we're probably going to have to custom make, parts pending. But at any rate, so what we got to do... Oh, God. This stuff is not freaking right. So at the end of the day, it needs to kind of sit about like yay. Only, it's got to be sitting out in order for us to be able to clear the coil over well. So this right here is probably about where the steering arm is going to sit compared to the rest of the car. As you can see, that is awfully wide. Good thing we're running wide body fenders, and we're going to have some really positive offset rims. So the nice thing about this is you can see how much actual movement this control arm has, considering we want to do off-roady things. And the stock suspension is not going to work. We could have, maybe put some spacers up in here or whatever. We won't gain any wheel travel, stock wheel travel on the car. It had 1-inch lowering springs, so honestly we'd get about 4.5 inches of wheel travel out of it, which, if you know anything about off-road, is really bad. So that's the entire point of this, dude. We're going to probably get rid of this sway bar. We're going to have to figure out something else for that, because there's no way it's going to not interfere with my coil over, which needs to go, down here, right in the middle of this freaking sway bar. So unless we can bend this damn thing to where it will clear that, and our steering, which is impossible, we're going to have to figure out a different solution. So there's a box frame on this part of the car right here where you can see these divots. This is all fully boxed right here. It's a unibody, yes, but it does have a boxed set of frame rails that go down the entirety of the car. So from here up in the bumper mounts all the way to the rear bumper mounts, there's a solid piece of tube channel that goes all the way across. The difference between a full frame car and one of these is the body is completely integrated onto this framing piece. On a full frame car, you wouldn't have any of that. You'd be able to, lift the body off of it, sort of like a pickup truck. You can see the frame poking out and the body is just kind of bolted on there. These, you can't do that. These are all one piece. You can't lift anything off of this frame. So, the wonderful thing about this frame is we're going to make a couple of mounts, and we're going to try and full box these mounts as well, or as close to full box as we can. So we'll have some plates that come down in here, go through this on either side of this strut tower mount, because if we cut that out, we're freaking screwed, and wrap around back to the other side, and we're going to have some ears that come out, what
4
did
inches.
we say, about 4 inches or so from the body. So the mounts will come all the way out to here. This would be the center point of our holes on the actual control arm itself, and we'll have a uni-ball upper and a heim joint lower, because we can do the heim joint on the lower but not the upper because of the spindle design of the Ranger steering knuckle. I mean, we could go, say, with a Mustang 2 front end or whatever, but like trying to source the parts, they're easy enough to find, but I'm not going to pay for a brand new Mustang 2 steering knuckle entire assembly, which just the knuckle itself is a couple $100 to see, oh, can I do the double heim joint thing and still be able to clear? We're still going to have the same problem. So for mounting on the rear, on the lower control arms, we're going to have to figure out what we're going to have to do. They're going to have to drop a certain amount of inches, because as you can tell, this steering knuckle is significantly bigger and heavier than the one that is off of the RX7 model cars. So, like I said, this upper is going to sit up quite a bit and be about 4 inches off the frame, and you can see where the lower sits, where we're going to have a taper ball adapter, and we're going to have to probably drop the control arm some in order to accomplish what we need to do, because the other golden deal is what we have to account for is the coilover itself. So on the idea of making our own little bracket here, and we're not really going to care about the hood since we're putting a 5.0 truck motor in this thing. The hood's probably going to have to be cut to begin with, so we may have to cut some holes in the hood in order to fit the coilover shocks the way we want to. But what we want to do is try and get the circle eyelet about 2 inches, or 1.5 inches to 2 inches above the strut tower, which I know is going to smack the hood, so we can fit the strut. Because at full compression, the strut, let's just throw this at 2 inches, at full compression it would be sitting right here. So there's where the bottom of the control arm would be sitting on the car at full compression. Now that to me kind of seems like a bad idea, because wheel travel and with the size tires I'm going to have, we're stuffing this thing at that point. So I mean, I may even just go off of the bottom, which would leave the control arm maximum height at about here. So as you can see, that's all fine and dandy. Well, problem is, at full droop, it's going to sit about here. That's a lot of travel. You're talking, easily 12, 14 inches of travel, which we'd like to get out of the car. So it may be, we're going to have to play around, probably make a bit of a drop on this, maybe even drop the strut itself 1 inch or 2 below, so that we can get the get the proper wheel travel out of it, because sitting here, let's say go 2 inches below would be about here, and there's where our minimum would be. And we want to be able to clear our tires in the wheel well without having to do an obnoxious amount of shaping and reforming and possibly get the structure of the car or the integrity of it compromised. We want to be able to keep the body as strong as we possibly can. That's why we're only going to cut out certain little sections of this steel here in order to slip through for the frame pieces, so we can get the shock tabs, and the frame itself should be easily able to handle that, considering people put 500-600 horse LSs in them and don't ever twist the frame. So that's what we're going to end up doing there. For the backs, we've pretty much figured out what we're going to do. We're getting rid of the IRS setup that's in the car, a sad face, but it's a really convoluted setup. It's a horrible design. I don't know what in Sam Hell Mazda was thinking when they made that. It's outright garbage. It's not even going to come close to working for what we want. We can't modify the rears at all, so it's going to get a solid axle, and we're going to probably put some trailing arms on it. So this car, when it's all said and done, is going to probably be close, if not more, than SUV height. So this is going to be one hell of a project, especially once we get the control arms finished and need to put the car up. And I mean up, in order to see if we can what we've got for wheel travel. But that's the journey I've decided to take this car down. I've had this car for 10 years. Past 5 years it hasn't run. I blew the rear rotor housing. It had a crack in it. I got another rotary for it, but I don't trust it. It probably needs rebuilt. It was in a car that got wrecked, and I have no idea, because it punched the radiator, it bent the cooling fan. It was a thought process, be able to rebuild it, but rebuild kits have gotten so expensive nowadays that it's almost not worth it. This is why we're doing a swap in the first place. I mean, I didn't want to do a 5-liter myself. I wanted to do something different. I was going to just use the 3.8 Mustang motor. That didn't pan out, but the 5-liter bolts directly to the Mustang transmission. Whether you got the V6 or the V8 one, they're both the same. So transmission controller, engine management system, $500 kit from Granny Speed Shop, and this car would actually run and drive if I put the regular suspension stuff back in it. But we're not going to do that. This is a little bit of a long-term project, so we're going to see how far we can go. I know these are getting thrown out. The steering rack itself is not going to be used. They're really weak, and with the added weight in the front of the car, I really don't want to snap a steering rack while I'm off-road. And so the idea there is get a 4-wheel drive Explorer rack. That's going to be the closest thing I can get, and we'll Heim joint the steering ends and see what all happens. Was going to do a high angle kit on it, but that might be much later down the line. First, we have our hands full trying to figure out this whole ordeal, so hopefully we'll get some material coming in here pretty soon, be able to get the actually trying to mock up and cut out a couple of these sections in this inner fender, find a way to keep this strengthened up so we don't have to worry about it as much. Maybe run a tube piece behind here that goes back down to the frame, and we'll see what happens from there. So that's the update on this car. As you can see, a lot has been trying to happen. We just have not had cooperation, thanks to a lot of this pandemic stuff. A lot of people are shut down. It's getting hard to source parts. It's getting hard to source tools. I mean, we spent a month and a half trying to find a pipe bender, and I just gave up you can't see. I can't seem to find them. I can't even seem to get stuff from manufacturer direct right now. So it's a work in progress. We're fighting the budget. We're fighting the availability of parts and tools and the clock because we want to have this thing done for next year's Gambler. I'm not entirely sure if we're going to be able to accomplish that or not. But first things first, I have to get this 5-liter kind of set up to go in because I don't know if it changes the entire K member or how they actually get that kit bolted in. So that's going to be the first part of the discovery. It's getting everything set up, get the engine mocked up in here so we know what we're looking at as far as space. We're trying to get the control arm set up that we're going to try and do in the front of this thing done. That way we're working around, both the engine and everything's in place. We can, because the thing that we don't want to do is get going hardcore on just one part of this and find out, well, we made the suspension pieces and now the freaking engine cradle's not going to fit. That's the kind of stuff that we're really concerned about with this large of a build. Compared to Tofu's Mustang, this is way more work than I bargained for, but fuck it. Tofu's Mustang, too easy. We need to do the big dumb that I'm never going to finish.
No,
but at least
you're
you guys...
fucking finishing it. This is getting finished one way or another. If I have to do it myself, I'll fucking do it myself.
It'll get finished in a junkyard. Coming to a junkyard near you. Pristine shape convertible doors. You can't have my mirrors though. I'm keeping the mirrors. Those are expensive. Alright, I need a cigarette and about 5 gallons of water.
Alright.
Because Jesus Christ, I'm dehydrated.
Join us next time on MP7 Flight Crew, where we might do some work.
Maybe.
Wait, you mean we actually do something on camera?
We actually do something on camera? God
Stop!
damn. Revealing all our secrets, would you? Jesus Christ. Can I have my lighter too? Is that too much to ask? Ask for a cigarette. My lighter, what's my cigarette?